Hey guys, welcome back to Aussie and the Pro. I'm TJ Laramie, and I got my co-host here, Aussie.
What's going on, guys? So today I'm actually gonna this is gonna be an interview format, and I'm gonna interview TJ Laramie, who's now a UFC fighter. Congratulations, TJ.
Thanks, man.
How good did it feel when he said I forget exactly what he said, but he was basically talking about how dominant you were and how much of a beast you were.
Yeah, man. I was a little bit worried. My game plan originally going into the fight was to try to stand a little bit, because make it more of an impressive fight. But actually going to the ground, I was able to do a lot of damage to the point where he couldn't continue, and he loved it. Said he loved that savage performance, word for word. That's what he said. So I was pretty stoked to hear him say that, and he seems really excited to have me on the roster now.
Yeah, that was incredible. Not only for you, I can't imagine for you, but even for us watching at home. Everybody was blowing up my phone, even saying like, "Oh, your boy made it! Your boy made it!" So it was an amazing victory for you and for even like just everybody in Windsor who knows you. You had us stress out there with that armbar that he had, kind of.
Yeah, it was a good attempt, but it was never, in my opinion, really put me in danger. I'm very like experienced on the ground. I grapple with a lot of high level guys, and if I ever felt at any point that I was gonna be in a real dangerous situation, I probably would have been moving out of the positions a lot faster. But if you watch, I was pretty calm, and you don't really see me. I wasn't really in a panicky state at all. I was just chilling, kind of letting him move. Relaxing my arm, not really trying to fight too hard. I'm. I know all the right techniques, and just when you're in a position like that, the best thing you can do is just relax and forcing your way to a position will never be the way.
So, TJ, at what point did you know MMA was your calling? Like, you've obviously trained for a long time. Like, what point did it just click in, that this could be something more, that you could excel to the highest level?
For me, I felt like after my very first amateur fight was when I was like, oh, okay, once I've like tasted the first like feeling of winning and like hard work actually paying off, uh, was when I was just like, man, the feeling that you get, the high that you get, is just so rewarding that there's like nothing else I could even compare that to. You know what I mean? Like it's the best feeling in the world. You're on top of the world, and there's nothing I could even explain that would come close to that.
So it was really that first fight that kind of made you realize that you have what it takes. And
Yeah, exactly. Like showing that I have the dedication. Um, Especially like I guess you could say the first time I really felt that I could compete at the next level, like a highest level, was the first time I probably got some rounds in with a guy who was already in the UFC, and I won't name names or nothing like that, but I was pretty young. I was only 16, and I felt like I did very well. And being only 16, being only 16 and doing as well as I did, that was when I was like really confident in myself and really, really mentally strong after that.
so obviously now you're in the UFC, and I don't know the details of your contract or all of that stuff, but talk about your journey to the UFC and kind of through the Contender series. What was the journey like? Like, walk us through the call. When did you hear? Who's the first person you told?
So actually, originally, uh, my first like Zuffa promotion debut was supposed to be at UFC Saskatoon in June, but obviously because of Corona and stuff like that, all the events got postponed and rescheduled, relocated, all that. Um, So when that happened, they said worst case scenario, we put you on Contender Series in August, and that I got this information around March. So at that point, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. I'll start training. You know what I mean? I'll start training just in case a short notice opportunity comes out. Then obviously COVID hit, so I knew the June thing wasn't gonna happen, and then the so I started more preparing just for anything, a possible short notice UFC call or Contender Series. And then around the June time frame, mid June, I got the call. It was like I think I think it was exactly 8 or 7 weeks out when I got the actual name and opponent for Contender Series, and I was just like, "Hey, you want to fight Daniel Swain Contender Series?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I've been training for a fight, so I could go next week. I could go tomorrow, whenever." I was already pre getting ready for fights and stuff like that. So once I got that, I was ready to go. The gyms were still pretty closed in Windsor and stuff, so I was just getting work in with my boxing coach Caro, and then grappling with my guys at the Tecumseh BJJ. Um, but as soon as I found out I had the fight, flew to Vegas, got all that done, stayed there for 5 weeks, and haven't really uh, left. You know what I mean? I had the fight, and now we're on to number two.
Yeah, and actually, that was going to be my next question: is who do you want to fight next? But I don't want to ask that question yet because you have an opponent. September 19th, in Las Vegas, Derek Minor is your opponent. So
Yeah.
I haven't watched too much tape on him, but what's your kind of, without giving away too much, what's your strategy going into that fight?
Well, it's interesting. So a big reason I took this fight is because Derek Minner actually opposes a very similar style as Daniel Swain. They both have very similar records, even where Daniel Swain was 20-9 when I fought him. Minner is 24-11. So very similar records, all mainly submission wins on both ends. I think Minner has 17. I think Swain has 12 or something like that. So very similar on both ends. Mostly first round finishes for each fighter. Um, but a lot of times their weaknesses seem to be pretty similar too. Although where Swain's weaknesses weren't really exactly what Minner's weaknesses are, because Minner seems to be getting caught in submissions a lot. So he's kind of a live by the sword, die by the sword type of fighter, where it's like he's either going to get you or you're going to get him. And then Swain was more skilled when it came to not really getting caught in any submissions on the ground. He's been subbed, but he's been kind of finished around the board. When you look at Derek Minner, majority of his losses are all by submission. So I plan really the main reason I took this fight was because I feel like I just trained for this fight, and
Hmm.
then my weight was pretty good. So I got the call. I think the email like 3 or 4 days after I fought, something like that. So I was actually in the middle of a run when I got the email, looked at it, and I was like, okay, sweet. I like the name. Um, Actually, me and Minner fought on the same card, my second pro fight in Canada back at Hard Knocks when he fought Jesse Arnett. So I've known him for a while. I've known of him for a while. He was training in Vegas for a bit too, around the same time I was a while back. And then, yeah, so I just feel like totally based upon how my last fight went and I came out injury free, similar styles. I was like, all right, perfect. You know what I mean? I have no reason to say no. So I'll take it, get this out of the way, and yeah, we'll move on after that.
Yeah, I can't wait for that fight. You're gonna put me into more stress that night, and I'm sure all your friends back home. Um, just in terms of, I don't want to look past any of your opponents, but who are some of the fighters that you want to fight, in the next, let's say, year or two? Some of your dream fights, or
For me, a fighter obviously at 145 that I feel like is getting a lot of hype right now. You know what I mean? Would be a great matchup for me. Would be Chase Hooper, obviously. I feel like, well, he's 1-1 in the UFC. Um, he's a younger guy like me. I feel like it's a great matchup, but I highly doubt that they put two people that they're trying to promote and build up together so early on. But you never know. So that would be a matchup for me. And then after I get past this fight, um, I don't want to like really look past anybody, but I feel like Kron Gracie would be a great matchup for me. I feel like that'd be an awesome fight at 145. He's coming off a loss to Cub Swanson, but I feel like he has a lot of holes in his games that I do really well against. He's like I do really well against other grapplers, and I feel like he's someone that I could really exploit and really work my whole game on. Um, and then there's always the possibility of moving down to 135 for me too. I would like to really maybe play with that and see if that's possible.
that sounds exciting. Um, so let's talk a little bit about the sport of MMA, because I think, in the past you had a guy that would be, I don't know, a super good grappler, a super good boxer. Their stand up was on point, but if they got taken to the ground, it was over. So how has MMA evolved, and what do fighters focus and prioritize these days?
Okay, so um, fighting's evolved in so many different ways. So it's not really always a style versus style matchup to where it's like you can't really even break it down to where it's just grappler, striker.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? You can't even break that down anymore. It gets so specific to the point where it's like, okay, this guy's good on the ground, but where is he good on the ground? You know what I mean? Is he good on top? When he's on top, does he do damage? When he's on the bottom, does he go for submissions or does he try to get up? You know what I mean? There's so many different aspects of MMA now where you really do have to be well rounded and you have to find what works the best to a winning strategy. You know what I mean? What a
Hmm.
lot of people fail to realize is like, okay, what's cool to do in the gym uh, is not always what's cool to do in the fight because, you know what I mean? Playing on your back and fighting for submissions in the gym is all cool when you're not getting smashed with elbows and and a judge isn't there to judge the fight until you lost that round. But in the gym, you might feel safe and comfortable doing that. You know what I mean? I feel like that's where a lot of people get mixed up. Um, and then you got stand up. You know what I mean? Like we've seen it with Gokhan Saki in the UFC, where it's like, okay, amazing kickboxer, one of the best in the world, but um, striking for MMA is not the same as striking for striking. You know what I mean? Of course, you could transfer over, but that's also a process in itself. And then you got people who are good college wrestlers, good college U.S. wrestlers that, yeah, their wrestling is going to be good for MMA because they're good wrestlers overall, right? But then you got guys like GSP who's never wrestled a day in his life and can out wrestle these guys in MMA. So it's the thing is with MMA is that there's so many factors to what makes a good fighter is that MMA is its own sport. You know what I mean? And that's what people fail to realize. And although um, although everybody prefers a certain area of the game, you know what I mean? If you're not well adapted in every area or in at least like 90% of the areas, you're going to get at sooner or later you will lose. You will lose because you're going to find the guy that's made up for your 10% that you haven't got good at and he's going to finish you. You know what I mean? The best fighter doesn't always win, man. The guy who's better at most things doesn't always win and we've seen that so many times.
Yeah, and I think we really see that with some of the strategies that certain coaches implement against different fighters, right? Like you hear, or you see at least some fighters, they maybe want to stand, but they know they need to just bring the guy down and dominate on the ground, right? You
Yep.
hear Javier Mendez say father's plan, which tells Habib not to stand up and box, but to take his opponents down and smash them, right? So, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain coaches I think and teams that implement that very well. So, um,
And that's another thing too is finding a coach that realizes that and understands that you got to always play to your fighter's strength. Okay, so like if a fighter like Khabib, for example, is amazing at taking guys down and beating them up, okay, let's adapt your stand up to complement what you're already good at. You know what I mean? Let's not try to totally take that part of your game away and
mhm.
make you into a stand up fighter. You know what I mean? Let's transition your boxing into your takedowns or to your stand up into your takedowns or you know what I mean? Vice versa, like that. If you're a great striker, let's make your wrestling good enough to make your striking better. You know what I mean? Let's do like that's what a lot of people don't realize and don't understand, and you'll get a lot of ego mixed up with the coaching and stuff like that.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed about you too, not just because we talk about fighting a lot, is your fight IQ is pretty high, right? So you, like, how do you strategize? Do you have a team? Do you guys kind of talk about things, or do you kind of implement your own plan? How does that process work for you?
I mean, for me, mainly, I could pretty much you're only as good as your last fight is what I always say. So the main thing for me, okay, I gotta watch the last three fights, see what the consistencies are, and then maybe if it's a guy with a big record, like for example Derek Minner, um, I watch recent fights and then I'll watch his fights from maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, and then I'm like, oh, if they haven't changed a lot, that tells me a lot too because it kind of makes them a little bit more predictable and at that point, it's like, okay, I know if he hasn't changed much in 7 years, this fucking 4 week training camp is probably going to be not much different. You know what I mean? So I can kind of expect the same thing. And then from that point on, there's certain matchups I'll look at. For example, like if a guy I'm fighting is taller than me, I'll look at matchups he's had where he's fought guys around my size to see how
Mhm.
he fights, see how he moves. You know what I mean? So I try to find super specifics like that where it's like, okay, like for me, for example, I'm not going to fight every single guy the same. You know what I mean? If you look at all my fights, every single fight is different. Every single fight, how I approach every fight is different based on the body type, based on their style. You know what I mean? So I'll try to find maybe an opponent that's similar style to me that they fought in the past and then break it down from there.
Okay, great. Just some more like, less MMA questions, I guess. So what are your top 3 local restaurants? I know it's going to be hard to
In
pick.
Windsor, Ontario,
Yeah.
in Windsor, my favorite 3 restaurants, Vito's would definitely be one of the top 3 for me. Um, Penalty Box, of course. It's Windsor classic. You know, you can never go wrong. And then, man, there's just so many different
I know.
kinds of foods I like. And honestly, I feel like based on everywhere I've been, I feel like Windsor has some of the best food, restaurants, and
And the
stuff like
best
that in the
pizza.
world. Yeah, by far the best pizza, easily, by far. And then if we're gonna say restaurant, um, I would have to go with like honor roll sushi, just because when I dine in there, you know what I mean. I feel like it's a great experience. They really they make great sushi. They have good sliders, and just the whole environment of the place is really awesome.
Mhm. And then the other 2 follow-up questions are top 2 MMA fighters and your favorite comedian.
Okay, so if I'm gonna go MMA fighters all time, I'm gonna have to go with probably Frank Yeager and Khabib are probably my top 2 all time. And then and sorry, what was the other one?
Favorite comedian.
Favorite comedian. Um hmm, I don't really watch too much stand up, but Dave Chappelle's really awesome to
Yeah,
watch. I kind of like him.
that's hilarious. So there's so in terms of some other topics that I thought maybe we could talk about, because usually you and I just kind of chat about what's happening in MMA, right? And so we did a past episode of some of the most exciting fights that we want to see.
Yeah.
So one of those fights is Costa Adesanya. That's
Mhm.
coming up.
Yeah. Yep. The
That
week after I fight.
yeah, that's like, I mean, I cannot wait for that fight. Like that week is going to be an insane week. Um, so what are your predictions? What do you think about that fight? Because I mean, obviously it's kind of a mixed. There's 2 sides. Obviously, some people say that Costa's just going to walk him down and take his shots, come forward, and other people say Adesanya is going to, counter, kind of run away a little bit, and kind of strategically counter. What do you think?
Okay, so I think it's in a bigger cage because it's in Abu Dhabi, so it's going to be in the full size cage. I think Adesanya is going to win by decision, just because he's going to have a little bit more space to move. Now, honestly, I feel like if it was in a smaller cage, like the Apex, which is a not a super small cage, but a pretty small cage, that Costa actually has a better chance of winning in a situation like that, where it's like Adesanya doesn't really have the distance to work and to pick his shots. But the only thing, the reason I think Adesanya is going to even probably do better in this fight than he did against Yoel is because I feel like Costa's going to be a little bit more reckless and open up more versus Yoel, who was really tentative and kind of made Israel tentative too. So I think it's going to be an exciting fight, but I think Adesanya is just going to pick him apart mainly.
Yeah, I kind of think the same thing, but I kind of want to see Costa win just because he's such a psychopath, and like just the
Yeah.
next few fights after Israel would be a delight to watch. So I kind of have mixed feelings. I know Adesanya is like the type of guy to do well against people who just kind of come forward and don't really kind of pick their shots wisely, but I don't know. I'm still leaning towards Costa in this fight. I think it's just because I want him to win, just because he's such a
Yeah.
psychopath. Um,
Yeah, he's a beast.
So the other fight that's obviously super interesting is Habib versus Gaethje.
Yep.
So I mean, here we have somebody who's been on a tear lately, Gaethje, and you have somebody who's been on a tear their whole career, which is Habib. Some people say that Gaethje's wrestling background and his takedown defense are different, than some of the other fighters that Habib fought. Some people are saying that if he can keep it into the center of the ring and not get pushed up, towards the cage, that he won't get taken down. What do you think about that fight? How do you think that's going to play out?
I mean, I haven't really. Has Gaethje really? The biggest thing for me, everybody keeps talking about Gaethje's wrestling, all this, all that. But I've never really seen a fight where he's had to use it or get pushed. You know what I mean? So it's like, how many times have we seen good MMA grapplers or good MMA wrestlers beat a guy who was college national champ or something like that? We've seen it many times. GSP ran through college check, no problem with takedowns. And that's a NCAA All American, or he might have even been champ, getting run through by a guy who's never even stepped on a wrestling mat before he did MMA, you know?
Mhm.
I don't really think that holds any weight, especially because it's not a style he likes to use or use at all. So, if anything, um, one thing, Gaethje he's a big power. He looked really awesome in his last fight because he was a lot more patient and conservative with his shots. So he was trying to fight for the 5 rounds, and that makes him dangerous against Khabib. But the thing is Khabib puts you in situations you don't want to be in, which makes you work way harder than you plan to. You know what I mean? And then once you get working way harder than you have to, your arms start to get heavy. You lose that pop. You lose that power. So, um, I mean, he's fought tons of dangerous people before Khabib, so I feel like Gaethje's going to be no different than say how he may have beaten Edson Barboza or how he beat
Mhm.
Poirier or how he
Yeah.
beat. This is MMA. This is MMA. This is not college wrestling. You know what I mean? This is not the same. You know what I mean?
So yeah, I think something similar. The one thing that I was a little bit worried about are those calf kicks. They've been ruining people's lives in
Yeah.
fights lately, and but I think he's not going to be able to get those off because Habib's style is not to kind of sit back like Tony did in that fight and kind of stand up and keep distance. I think Habib's going to put the pressure on him, and kind of similar to Edson Barboza. I know it's a harder kick to get off, but Edson could hardly get off his spinning back kick. That. So
Yeah.
I think he's gonna pressure him and take that weapon away. And I think the same thing. He's gonna bring him up against the fence, and his unorthodox wrestling and grappling, I think, will be the deciding factor in that fight. So I'm with you on that one. The last thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to bring up, but so Khamzat Chimaev is fighting Gerald what's his last name?
Mearshart.
Mearshart, yeah. So it's kind of interesting because Dana White's saying that he's going to fight Damian Maia only a few weeks later, which is kind of unprecedented, I think, in the UFC, like especially in the last 5-10 years. Um, what do you think about that situation?
It's actually on the same card as me, so it's pretty interesting. So, I honestly think that Gerald Mearshart is someone you can't overlook. You know what I mean? The guy's shown fucking skills on the feet. He's knocked people out on the feet. He's submitted. He has amazing grappling game for a big dude. And I know for a fact that he outsizes Cam. I'm not sure his name.
Khamzat Chimaev? Yeah.
Yeah, Kazmat. Or Shemaev. He definitely is a lot bigger. You know what I mean? And given that Gerald's a fucking awesome wrestler and or awesome grappler in general, and Chimaev is predominantly has at least shown predominantly wrestling in his UFC fights. I don't think it's someone that can get walked over. You know what I mean? You
Hmm.
never know. I mean, you never know. Maybe that Chimaev guy is that good. I think he's a little bit. I think he's a little bit like hyped up for the position he's in. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? He fought a guy who's never won in the UFC, and then he fought a guy who was on a week or two notice for the UFC. You know what I mean? So it's like you're comparing that to a guy who's fought 4, 5, 6 times in the UFC already, maybe even more, and has a winning record in the UFC. I don't really feel like Mearshart a guy that can just get looked over to the point where it's like, all right, we're gonna book him with Damian Maia next.
Hmm.
You know, so um, we'll see. It's an interesting situation, but maybe he will fight Maya. But I doubt it'll be as quick as they think.
Yeah, I mean, like, so he's taking that fight at 185. So his when he had the 2 fights in a row, he fought at 185, then 175, or sorry, 185, then 170. So I think he's probably going to take like Damian Maya's 170, right? So I think he's going to take a similar.
Yeah, yeah,
I think he's going to take a similar like thing, so it's not as hard on him to cut weight twice. But I don't know. Part of me just wants, like, it's just such an insane story and such an insane kind of thing. And obviously him being, a Chechen, and like I'm just kind of rooting for him. So I really hope he kind of, he can get the job done. And if he does dominate him, like he dominated other people, like he's a superstar. I mean, there's no
yeah,
question. Like you can't, especially if he gets another 2 victories in this period of time, it'll be unprecedented, and it'll like I think he'll just be like he's already getting so much hype. I mean, UFC's posting him all the time. Dana White's talking about how much he loves him. So it's an interesting thing to see play out. But this will be his biggest test for sure in his career.
yeah. I think that's what I mean. So it's like I doubt that he cuts much weight to get to 185 in general. So that's what kind of makes me a little skeptical about him just running through Mearshart, because I know for a fact Mearshart's cutting weight to make 185. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
yeah, there's going to be a size difference, and if he can make 170 a couple weeks later, then highly doubt, I highly doubt that Chimaev is very big. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
As far as like overall size, so we'll see. It's going to be a test, and we'll see if he passes. If he does, then he's fucking on the way to doing good things.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know, like he was saying that his coaches, they don't want him to make these decisions where he's like, oh, I'll fight next week and I'll fight tomorrow and So I think it's cool that he's that courageous, and he's willing to take those chances, and they're going to come with high reward if he's successful. But from a strategic perspective, it's really risky too, right? Like to take, like if you
Yeah, I
fight at
mean,
170, why you take 185 is a hard fight to take, especially against a big 185er.
yeah, I mean, like I'm sure a lot of the call outs he's doing is more just as a publicity stunt, because you're calling out Nick and Nate Diaz in the same night. Like that's not obviously a situation that'll never happen. You're right. So you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean. Like they're call outs that are more just for publicity than anything. But yeah, you know what I mean. Best thing he can do is, if he's gonna fight this frequent, he just needs to win, and then everyone's gonna believe him. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all he needs to do.
So TJ, I know you got things to do and you're busy. So everybody, tune in September 19th. UFC Fight Night. It's Fight Night, right? Fight Night.
Yeah, it's a Vegas number 12 or 13 or something like that.
So yeah, everybody tune in. TJ Laramie versus Derek Minner. Bro, we're rooting for you. The whole city's with you. You're gonna be
Oh
stressing a lot of people out, and
yeah.
hopefully you get victory that day. Yeah, man. Best of luck.
Thanks, man, for sure.
All right, brother. Take care.
All right, dope, man. See ya.
Peace. Oh, I forgot to shout out Jake, True Believer, Pittsburgh. I finally got that hoodie that you promised me 2 years ago. Thank you, brother.